And we are thrilled to welcome today Kevin Moore from the Cleveland Playhouse. Kevin became managing director of the Cleveland Playhouse in 2007. And if you are at all familiar with Playhouse history, you will recognize that this was a significant time of transition as the Playhouse moved from its former residence near Cleveland Clinic to its magnificent and newly renovated home at Playhouse Square. This move realized a partnership with both Playhouse Square and with Cleveland State University, partnerships that remain strong to this day under Kevin's leadership. Kevin came to us in Cleveland after a cross-country career journey. He grew up in Minnesota. He worked at La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego and then Woolly Mammoth in Washington, D.C. before arriving with us, which we're thrilled he did, for the Cleveland Playhouse leadership role in 2007. He shares his wealth of knowledge and experience with others by teaching his craft at Cleveland State as well as at Case Western Reserve University. Shortly after he arrived in Cleveland, Kevin wrote that he believed arts organizations should be active participants in the communities they serve. He wanted to make sure that Cleveland Playhouse was engaged in active discourse in social service, economic development, and other issues facing our community. And he has certainly carried that forward and make sure that Cleveland Playhouse, by its choice of productions, as well as his own engagement of the community, is an active citizen. He is a proud member of the Leadership Cleveland class of 2009, and I think you have some cheerleaders from that class with you today, Kevin. Welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Marianne. It's a pleasure to be here and really an honor to have the opportunity to speak to the group. I'm going to share screen because I like to speak from PowerPoints, and that's just a little easier. Hit that button, patience with me a little bit. All right. Okay, everybody got that, I hope. And so let's talk, where's the button? Oh. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with, there we go. All right, so a little bit, Marianne filled you in a little bit about Cleveland Playhouse, and I know that there are a bunch of people on here who know us very well, but for those of you who do not, Cleveland Playhouse is America's first regional theater. If you're not familiar with the term regional theater, that is defined as a nonprofit professional company in service to a community, generally a community not named New York, New York being the capital of our industry. We are a resident company at Playhouse Square. We came there, this is 9 years ago, after about 80 years at the location out at 8500 Euclid Avenue. And we make our plays here in Cleveland for Cleveland audiences. The plays are specifically picked to speak to the moment in Cleveland, and we use a national and local talent base. And the sets are built here, the costumes are sewn here, the rehearsals take place here in Cleveland. And there's a very specific purpose to the work we do. Our plays and education programs are designed to be thought-provoking, culturally relevant, and always entertaining. If we're not entertaining you, we're not making the baseline of what great theater should be. And finally, as a tribute to the 100 years of artists and audiences and artisans and staff members and board members, the Cleveland Playhouse was accorded the 2015 Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater. That's our mission. To inspire, stimulate, and entertain diverse audiences across Northeast Ohio by producing plays and education programs of the highest professional standards. And our vision is to be a premier American regional theater that is welcoming, diverse, distinctive, bold, thrilling, and this is the kicker, the most important baseline. We are to be essential to our community. Our work is here to create a better, stronger community, a more connected, compassionate community through theater. Some facts about where we are. I'm very fortunate to have a professional partner in this work, the co-leader of Cleveland Playhouse, Laura Kepley, who is artistic director, and she oversees, she's a brilliant director in her own right and a great producer of the work that you see on her stages, on our stages. Another fact, we have a 60-person board of directors. I know a lot of people think of that as very large. It's actually a fairly standard number within the arts industry. And it's a wonderful collection of people, community leaders, and caring, generous people. Pre-COVID, we produced a 7-play main stage series, 6 plays in a subscription package and a holiday show every year. And our long-standing commitment to new work was manifested itself with the New Ground Theater Festival, which we typically would do every May. About 125 employees at peak employment, or peak part of the season. A lot of our employees are seasonal, so they come on when we're actually creating the plays in the mid-season. Roughly 100,000 visitors annually, including about 40,000 students. And this is just a small fraction. We have one of the largest education programs of any regional theater in the nation, actually, and this is just about half of the programs that we participate in or that we produce here. The 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which is an after-school programming funded by the Ohio Department of Education. Our own Leadership Center style work is the apprentice program, which helps young people transition from undergraduate work into the professional theater work. About 12 young people join us every season. The largest single program, it says CARE there, that is an acronym for Compassionate Arts Remaking Education. This is a curriculum that our teaching artists at Cleveland Playhouse developed to use theater to generate social emotional learning, build social emotional learning capacity in our young people. And we're in about 15 or 16 CMSD schools with full-time teaching artists embedded in that work. If you are interested yourself in taking some classes in theater, we have the CPH Theater Academy, which is open to the public. It's a tuition-based theater education program, and a long-standing partnership with Case Western Reserve University, where we have an MFA Master of Fine Arts and Acting program that accepts 8 students every other year. It's extremely exclusive. It's listed as one of the top 20 programs in the United States by The Hollywood Reporter. And then our newest program, we are a contributing or coordinating provider in the Say Yes to Education program. We were in 6 schools. You may know that Say Yes to Education was created to make sure that CMSD graduates had access to scholarships to advance their education. We participated in the wraparound services part of that. We were helping prepare those students that when they get those scholarships that they're prepared to succeed on that campus and in life. So this conversation is about the COVID-19 crisis. I actually, when I was going through my own Leadership Cleveland experience, it was 2008, 2009. It was the Great Recession. So we're really, and Laura Kepley, our artistic director, is a part of the class of 21 that's just starting this fall. So we seem to have a knack for doing Leadership Cleveland during times of major social crisis, an economic crisis. Of course, this hit hard. This hit everybody hard. And the governor announced a ban on mass gatherings on March 12th. That led to the immediate cancellation of 3 Cleveland Playhouse productions, 2 as part of our subscription series and 1 an MFA and acting program. And the postponement of our New Ground Theater Festival, the postponement of our annual benefit. The impact of that is our annual benefit is about 8 to 9% of our total gross revenue in any given year. So it's obviously a significant impact there. Within a week of the ban on mass gatherings, Cleveland Playhouse had to separate over 100 artists, administrators, and technicians who lost employment in that literally within a week. About $2 million in projected revenue was lost or deferred in the case of postponed events. The schools closed for 3 weeks and transitioned to virtual platforms. And the Say Yes to Education programming was eventually suspended. That was in its first year, and we were all learning how to do that programming, and the added complications of operating in this environment caused it to just the very reasonable and understandable decision to suspend that programming. Some silver linings, we had subscribers and ticket holders to those 3 canceled shows. About 80% of them opted to either donate their tickets back or accept a credit into a future season. Very generous of them. And those that asked for refunds, considering the economic fallout that we were dealing with, that's very understandable as well. We've seen donors step up and provide additional support this year. Which has been extremely necessary to help us navigate this financially. An extraordinary board of directors. The response by our board of directors, the 60 individuals, has been really extraordinary. And both in just in shows of emotional support, like how are you doing today? How are you making it through? And also in providing essential advice and deliberation around important challenges facing the company. We were very fortunate to receive a Paycheck Protection Program Act through the CARES Act and loan, which we think will be fully forgiven, about $1 million. And I know that there's a great deal of controversy around the PPP. I will just say from the perspective of Cleveland Playhouse, it was a lifeline and has helped us to navigate the situation to date in a very important way. One of our biggest concerns is actually the employees, the people in our world that make the art have lost employment, not just with us, but all across the country, and how we are helping our local and national artists and those seasonal production staff who are extraordinary artisans, and who have just completely lost, all options for employment within the performing arts right now. And certainly our support for unemployment programs and any other government programs that can help navigate this period is very, very, it's crucial. It's crucial. We have not, the ban was a little over 4 months ago, and we haven't been sitting around wringing our hands. We've been very, very, very busy. The education programs that Cleveland Playhouse produce, we flipped those over. We've been delivering about 200 hours a week of online instruction in the period of time. It was really amazing. It was a thing of beauty to behold, watching teaching artists transition from classroom-based curriculum to online in a matter of days. It was really extraordinary to see. Artistically, obviously, we can't gather people for a show, but under Laura Kepley's leadership, we have had a very active audience engagement programming online, virtual tours of shops and meeting with set designers and things like that. And a wonderful series that ran for 6 weeks and will come back in the fall called Live with Laura, Conversations with Artists. It's a 1-hour weekly show. Really well done, and an important way for people to learn more about the artists who make this work happen. Our e-newsletter, which was we did for each show, so we did about 6 times a year, was happening weekly in the spring, and we'll come back after a summer hiatus here. We've also been very, very busy in scenario and financial planning, trying to, as you might imagine, just figuring out the assumptions to budget with is just a tremendous amount of uncertainty involved in that. And at the end of the day, our board actually approved a budget that doesn't have plays in it, not because we've decided that we can't produce next year, but because that was the only one where we understood the assumptions well enough to actually write some kind of financial plan. And then we will present an amended budget to the board at the time that we know what we can actually do or have a better sense of what we can actually do. I'm also extremely pleased because when this first happened, one of my first calls was to our board member with Key Bank, Mark Bidkiff, and he just said to me, there's going to be another side of this, and what we want to do is build a bridge to the other side and not have to go through the valley. So what we're trying to do with our scenario and financial planning is build that bridge to get to the other side, and then where are we going to be when we get there? And we have a planning and progress committee of our board with key staff members participating that are trying to sort out what Cleveland Playhouse is going to look like on the other side of this when that happens. And I do say when, not if, it's when it happens. So I agreed to do this presentation, and I hope nobody expected me to come in with all sorts of brilliant answers, because it's really more about questions at this point. And has been for some time. So and a lot of these questions are the same ones I would have written down in March. When will we be able to perform in a theater? The governor's ban is indefinite at this point. If we were to try to produce before there is a vaccine, what does that look like? What does socially distant theater look like? What do we need to do to keep people safe? And that is, obviously there's the audience considerations. How many people can you put in the theater, and how far apart do they have to be, and how do they get their tickets scanned, and all that. But there's, importantly, artists. We are a human art form. We gather people into rehearsal halls and classrooms, and as well as into the theater. And we ask, if you're doing a musical, how, somebody singing that, that's projecting. That's projecting, into the air around. So how does that look? Is it economically viable? The costs of actually making that socially distant theater work, as well as likely limitations on revenue. I have a slide later that is trying to address the question of when we think audiences will come back, and what role does the vaccine or any potential vaccine play in that. A good third of our budget is actually dedicated to education programs. So what is the impact of all this on those education programs, and importantly, the teachers that we're putting into classroom situations? And we do know that Eric Gordon has announced that he's planning an announcement, I think, on the 24th. So the end of next week, that will relate to how schools are thinking about opening up in the fall, and we need to be responsive to that. And then what is the impact on our partners? When we moved to Playhouse Square in 2011, 2012, we created a business plan that was heavily reliant on strategic partnerships. The key one, of course, being Playhouse Square itself. They are a massive performing arts center and absolutely terrific at presenting a commercial theater and other forms of entertainment, and managing real estate. And they were a key partner. Cleveland State University is our landlord in parts of our business, our administrative offices and rehearsal halls. Impact on them is very important. And then, of course, CMSD. And our MFA program with Case Western. So anything that affects any one of those partners has a potential impact on us and our ability to deliver our programming. A little bit more about socially distant theater. One of the partners that I haven't mentioned actually is that one of the key factors in when we can perform again is actually our unions. In particular, Actors Equity Association. We are a union theater company, as are a handful of other theaters here in Northeast Ohio. They have to date, since March, approved 2 productions. Both of them are in Massachusetts, where there is a much lower infection rate at this point. One of the productions that they approved is a 1-person play. It's actually 2 union contracts, 1 stage manager, 1 actor. They will be using about 120 seats out of their 500-seat theater in order to socially distance the audience. And they are trying to address all of those questions that I was asking before about safety of artists, staff, and audience, and how they conduct their rehearsals, how they conduct their performances, how they conduct their customer service. And so we're all watching that. There's another one, it's a production of Godspell, it's outdoors. They're somehow going to stage a musical with all actors being at least 6 feet apart from each other at all times, which will be interesting. And they are limiting their capacity to 96. So there's, as you might imagine, there's limited revenue opportunity in the for ticket sales in those kinds of capacity situations. If we were a commercial company, like the Broadway tours that come through Playhouse Square or on Broadway itself, it wouldn't work at all. Those are very expensive productions, and they need those 2,000 to 3,000 seats filled with paying customers in order to make it economically viable. We're not. We're a nonprofit theater, so we have different options available to us through contributions and other forms of revenue. So we're looking at that. The question that I do often come back to is, okay, we've reduced the size of our theater. We've reduced, we've got actors standing 6 feet apart from each other all the time, or only one actor on stage. What actually does that look like? Is that a quality theater experience? Is that worth the potential risk to people's health and well-being in order to do that show? So what is the quality of the work? And we have, I said, under Laura's leadership, the quality of our work is consistently incredibly high. And so those are the standards, and it's in our mission statement, highest professional standards. So how does that happen? There are other, things happening in socially distanced theater. There's outdoor theater. Outdoor theater is actually its own kind of art form, requires different approach to sound and design and staging and audience interaction. That's not traditionally what we do, but then we're not doing a lot of stuff in the traditional way right now. And then there's virtual theater. Many of our fellow theaters across the country had productions that were running at the time that they were shut down, and they were able to capture those shows on video and then broadcast it on various platforms. And the unions relaxed certain rules about that in order to let that happen. We were not in that position. We were in mid-rehearsal for a show at that time, so we didn't have anything to actually record. But it's also, theater at its basic is about human interaction, about people on a stage and people in an audience. And so learning how to use the virtual platforms, which actually are not even theater as we would normally have defined it, is one of the challenges in front of us. I hate to, this is not going to be the last thing I have to say, but it's the last slide. But there is that question of, will people come back? We've been following various surveys that have been done. There's a consultant by the name of Colleen Dillenschneider who does a weekly update on her numbers. I was actually originally going to use her data for this conversation, and then this slide was published day before yesterday. Shugal Research is based out of DC. Actually, I used to work with them when I was running a theater down there. They're an excellent research firm. But if you can follow the data there, it's the likelihood of attending theater based on the month it opens. And again, understanding that the traditional theater going audience is a little bit older and tends to perhaps be in some of those most vulnerable population groups. So as you can see, if we were trying to do a show right now, that's 74% very unlikely of people actually coming to see the show, only 9%. And we don't start to get into above 50% until next May or June, according to this survey. And of course, information is changing quickly. So this is a snapshot of what people are thinking today. If there's an announcement about a vaccine, later this afternoon or tomorrow, then the survey would be potentially very different. But this is what we're looking at right now, and it's the best information we have available to us. All that being said, I had a slide. I was going to do a slide about things that make me hopeful, and it only had really one thing on it. And so I decided I didn't need a slide. But the things that make me hopeful are people, an extraordinary staff, an extraordinary board. We're 105 years old. We have found ways through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the Great Recession of 10 or 12 years ago. So I'm choosing to say we did that actually in every case through innovation, through adapting to new circumstances, trying new things. We actually created our education programs in the height of the Great Depression. And we found a way to perform. We actually opened this current season with a play inspired by the fact that we performed all the way through World War II, when most other entertainment entities shut down. And we found a way through. So there's that sort of perseverance. I would also say that this is an opportunity. We have to look at it as an opportunity. The world's going to look very different when we come out the other side of the pandemic. And if our job is to serve the community, and I mean all of the community, it's on us to rebuild in a way that serves that community. And I'm very pleased with, again, that our board is leading the way in planning and trying to understand what that looks like. That is my prepared remarks. I hope I didn't go on too long, but I'll come off of there and turn it over to whoever's moderating this part.
Kevin, thank you so much. We do have a couple questions. And to start, as you've shared some of the innovations that you and the team have done to still serve your audience, serve the constituents, what are some of those innovations that might stick around even as we look towards returning to in-person theater?
Well, I certainly think that the virtual platforms are going to be part of how we communicate. That technology was there 4 months ago when we weren't really using it. Now we're getting pretty good at it. Live with Laura is an extraordinary show. I don't know why we wouldn't, keep doing some version of that going forward, or kind of thing. So I think that's one of the things. We've also found that we're actually connecting better with our national artist community, because we're meeting with them regularly on Zoom and various other ways. And that is another silver lining of all this, is that we've actually had both here locally through Arts Cleveland and the other theaters in town and national entities. We're actually communicating a lot more now than we were 4 months ago. And I hope that the entire community carries that forward as we sort of build not just our individual company, but is understanding that we're part of a community, in service to a community.
Thinking through all of the questions, the uncertainty, and so many of the challenges, what might have surprised you about the past few months with what you've experienced?
What has surprised me? I have been working in the theater for nearly 50 years, and I guess at a certain point you lose your ability to be surprised by things. I have to say, there's things that have impressed me, and that has been the quality of leadership in this community, the caring and the generosity. I also think we should be very clear that this pandemic has exposed many big issues in our community that we need to bring forward. Our work in education, for example, we've seen firsthand what the digital divide means in this community. And I mean, we have examples of parents taking their child to somewhere local that has Wi-Fi so that they can participate in a class on their parent's phone. Whereas things that many of us may take for granted about access to technology is just not true, for everybody in this community. So I think that's certainly, again, is surprise the right word? Jarring would maybe be the better word about that.
And as we think about the work of the Cleveland Playhouse and all of those who have been affected by the closing of theaters, what can we do as a community to help support you, the organization, and those affected?
Well, certainly we're a nonprofit organization, so if you are so moved to make a contribution, we're using those dollars to build that bridge to get through to the other side of this. And eventually we will need to conduct some level of fundraising in order to restart the company, because we're basically in pause mode. But beyond that, I would certainly pay attention to the political environment, pay attention to any legislation that extends unemployment benefits to those artists and artisans that have been displaced. And I mean, we know directors and playwrights who have lost 10, 15 jobs because it's a very much a gig economy kind of world in the theater, and those are quite often independent contractor kinds of jobs, which don't have traditional access to unemployment benefits. And then there are things bouncing around in Washington about legislation. So any advocacy, the PPP, as I said, the PPP loan saved us. I mean, that was a lifeline for this company, and not just us. So that, despite the the myriad problems with how it was delivered and managed, it's still very valuable. And so those kinds of government programs are going to be a big part of all of us getting to the other side.
Well, Kevin, we thank you for your time today, and I'm sure we can all say that we look forward to a time when we can come back together and enjoy the in-person engaging theater experience. And we will share information about Cleveland Playhouse and the slides today for all of those who registered. So we encourage you to please follow up and help support as best you can. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mary Ann.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Kevin, thank you for your extraordinary leadership. And Laura, thank you for yours as well. It's clear that you are truly going to build that bridge and come out stronger on the other side. And whatever the people on this call can do to support you in the next few months, until we can all join together in a round of applause at the theater, we will do.